Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, Striking the Right Balance. We have Gil Canare, Senior Research Director for Demand Creation Strategies from SiriusDecisions, as well as R2i's SVP of Client Services, Kyle Krawjewski, joining us today, and myself, Natalie Staines, Director of Marketing for R2 Integrated. Very glad to have you all on the line. Please make sure if you've got your speakers on, if you could mute, please. We also do have a chat screen, so you're welcome to post questions there, and we will also leave some time at the end, and we can do a live discussion if we have questions. We have a pretty straightforward agenda today, so we will break down a current market overview with Gil and start to look at some of the challenges that are in the market and what SiriusDecisions research is showing, and then start to get into some of the key pillars and drivers that we can use for striking the right balance between current marketing execution and driving transformation forward. With that, I will hand it over to Gil.
Thank you, Natalie. As we look at the marketplace at SiriusDecisions over the last 13 years of working with companies of all sizes in B2B marketing, we've collected a database of metrics and benchmarks on how they do marketing. It's everything from what they spend to what they spend it on. And as we look at this data and do some analysis, one really striking thing that we've seen is the evolution in where that money's going. The chart that you're seeing represents the latest data that we've got from last year, and what it shows is that companies in the 500 million to 1 billion in B2B have spent about 43% of their marketing budget on demand creation programs. And when you think about the fact that on average these companies spend between 2 and 8% of revenue, we're talking about spending 1% to 4% of revenue just on demand creation. And what that says is this really reflects the change that we've seen over the years on marketing's role in the business. It's gone from being an overhead function that's designed to do events and collateral and generally be a support function to one that is deeply linked into the demand creation process. And you see that here. Marketing is about demand creation for the most part now. The challenge is, for a lot of companies, this is a transition that they're still going through. It's not something that's been done or finished. So while this is going on, while they're getting the money to spend on demand creation, they're managing this change management process. They're dealing with doing this in a customer-first way. They're working on differentiating themselves technologically wise, and all at the same time still measuring the effectiveness of their spend. So this is a transition that the companies are going through, and one that they find challenging. And to go to the theme of the webinar today, you have to do this change all while still keeping the lights on, still driving marketing while you're making the changes that you need in order to meet the future needs. What's driving this transition to a really demand-focused marketing organization is a lot in part to changes in the larger marketplace. For example, when we look at, when PwC asked CEOs all over the world, what they were concerned about, 78% of the US ones and 61% of the global ones came back and said, we're really concerned about digital transformation. And what's important to note here is this isn't marketing digital transformation. This is business digital transformation, one that spans everything from how you talk to customers to how you operate your business to how you sell to how you support your customers. It's that transition that's really keeping them up at night, and it's all being driven by the adoption and availability of technology. And it's causing changes in two different dimensions. The first dimension is it's changing the way companies behave. Companies are changing the way they operate, the way they market, the way they sell, and the way they interact with the people that provide services to them. And it's also changing the preferences of individuals as a whole, because now, and you see it in your own behavior, the way that you interact with marketing information, the way that you look for information, the way you do research, all of that stuff is changing. And that's something that as marketers we have to figure out how to support, because it's affecting us internally and again the market externally as well. So it wouldn't surprise you then to note that when we look at this next slide, when they asked another set of CEOs, where they prioritize digital transformation, 2/3 of them said that, hey, this is something that we're going to put at the center of our corporate strategy. This is a natural and frankly required reaction to the slide that we saw earlier. Digital is transforming how everything works, so you have to react to it. You have to make changes on your side as well. as marketing leaders, when you look at what this means, this has a couple of takeaways. The first takeaway is the fact that this is not something that you have a choice to do or not. You're going to have to do this because this is something the market's going to make you do. Your competitors are doing it. You're going to have to do it to be really effective. So it's something that if you're not already undertaking this journey, something that you should be doing right now. And again, you should be doing it with a customer-first focus. You should be doing it with a focus on keeping the lights on and making the goals that you've got now, all while building for this different future that we're looking at. The other takeaway for marketing leaders here is that when we're talking about digital transformation, this isn't about just going out there and running more ads or going out there and putting out apps for your products or switching from billboards to content syndication. When we're talking about digital transformation in this sense, we're talking about changing everything from how you think about the customers, from how you actually plan and execute the marketing, down to how you support the customers. It's something that needs to be, for an organization, an end-to-end transition. So now that we've sort of laid out the nature of the marketplace and what's going on, let's talk a little bit about the different ways that you can approach that. What you're looking at here is the way that we represent the customer and buyer's journey. We look at it from two different dimensions. There's the different stages. For example, in the buyer's journey, there's education, solution, and selection. And as they transition into being a customer, you have to talk about how you deliver the product, how you develop that relationship, retain them, and grow them. When you look at this chart, what you're seeing is an example of an enterprise type sale where it's a complicated sale, there's a lot of people involved, it's going to take a few months to a year. And what you see is that human and digital interactions have to interact, they have to work together. Your salesperson is going to go out there and is going to talk to the client, hopefully make a good impression. At some point they're going to come to the website and take a look at the content, if nothing else, just to make sure the salesperson isn't pulling their leg on some of these things. And because of that, it's important that the conversations that are happening on both sides are supporting each other and that you're providing consistent information. Your buying journey that's specific to you will be different. The proportion of digital and human will change. The nature of the interactions will be different. But what's important to note here is that the digital transformation that you're working towards, that you have to drive, has to support this process from end to end. You can't just focus on the education or just on the customer marketing. You have to look at it from the entire set. And you have to keep in mind that this is all designed to help the customer navigate the process from starting out as a prospect to ending up a long-running customer. So as you look at the digital transformation, think about the nature of the interactions that you have to provide. Think about the kind of marketing content that you have to deliver, and then use that to determine the exact nature of the digital transformation that you have to go through. Now, in general, when we look at this, we bring it back to demand creation. And in demand creation, there are some very specific things that we think that you need to look at. For example, every marketing job starts with driving inquiry. How do you seed the awareness, the reputation of your company in the marketplace so that as you launch programs that are designed to create inquiry and create demand, they land and they're accepted. From there, you have to use that inquiry and you have to take that and progress it and qualify it. You have to nurture it through the buying process. Not long, and it may be fairly straightforward. If you're selling an enterprise product that's got a 6, 7, 8, 9-month sales cycle, nurture is a huge part of your job. How do I take that initial interest and turn it into something that's ready for sales to take and close? And as it enters that sales process, marketing's job shifts towards being able to enable and accelerate that sales conversation and the movement from qualified lead to revenue. And in the end, when it reaches customer marketing, the goal is to maintain that relationship and to continue to nurture that relationship even though they've already made the initial purchase, so that as they make their final purchase or their next purchase, they're ready and willing to spend more money with you. Now, the challenge that digital adds to this is that when you look at these different elements, technology is embedded across all of them. When you're trying to drive inquiry, you're usually leveraging digital media, everything from websites and search. When you're talking about progressing in qualification, marketing automation and your content, your customer relationship management tool plays a huge role in that, as it does in the sales process and in customer relationships. So as you look at this challenge and all the different steps that you have to navigate, keep in mind that you have to figure out a way to differentiate your technology and build a technology base that will let you support that from end to end.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the digital transformation and what it's going to take to actually support those changes and those marketplace realities that we've just talked about.
Hey, great. Thanks, Gil. Hey, so, the thing is all organizations are struggling with transformation. Change isn't easy. Not only is it a financial investment, but it requires a different way of thinking, organizing, and functioning. Businesses need new processes. They need them to manage new technologies. They need new roles and skill sets to define the roadmap, the phases and milestones, the plan to get there, and of course to execute. Change isn't easy. So smart marketers right now, they know that transformation doesn't happen overnight. Gil speaks to it as being a process. It's not an event. It never ends. But there are some core components to consider in the path to digital transformation, many of which lend themselves to a parallel path of execution and transformation, which we see basically in every endeavor we have with all of our clients. These key pillars keep coming up time and again as the main drivers of digital transformation. At the same time, they're representing some of the key challenges that we're facing. Because transformation is inherently change that affects not just marketing, but the entire business model. It's really critical that organizations and leadership are driving transformation from the top down and represented by key champions, whether an internal change agent or an external partner, and likely it's usually both, who can back the process and serve in that capacity. That defined role for managing change is going to enable a commitment to transformation and help define a pragmatic approach that works across the organization. Probably, one of the biggest reasons, or the main reason that organizations are committing to transformation today is the customer. The customer has changed the way that we have to think. They're engaging, influencing, making decisions, and buying. Everything that they're doing today is different than in the past. And brands that want to keep up with their customers, they need to put them at the center of their strategy and every experience they deliver. In our opinion, really, customer experience is the #1 thing that CMOs are competing on today. So you have to put the customer first. And this may seem obvious, and I think it's very obvious. We've seen it in B2C, but historically, product-centric brands, this is a major shift, and we're seeing that very heavily continuing today in the B2B world. And we know that the audience today is largely B2B. So we have to move from product to customer. Another key driver that we're seeing is analytics. We're used to tracking historic data and activity that drives conversion. But we have to break outside the analytics box, and we have to be able to aggregate, not only aggregate and centralize data, but use it to better identify opportunities for transformation. Inherently, it's going to inform better customer experiences. We've got an example later, which we're going to talk to, that speaks to understanding the customer better, that is going to inherently inform that transformation for Volvo. But it's bigger than just tracking interactions. Analytics are going to help uncover better ways to unify and improve the role of technology. Ultimately, that's at the core of digital transformation. It's common to think of digital and equate it to a website. But with today's landscape that covers how, where, and when customers experience your brand, marketers, they need to move beyond relying on technology as simply a tool for execution. When combining analytics and insights in a customer-first culture, technology represents an opportunity to help you get to market faster, be in more of the right places at the right time, and really serve as a point of differentiation. Make no mistake, this is competition, right? So technology is that lever or series of levers that we can use to transform our business model. It's no longer a set of tools for demand gen. That's why it's critical to involve all teams and stakeholders to ensure that technology is fully connected to the customer experience, business objectives, and this typically leads us out of the marketing department to other key areas of the business like customer service, product, distribution, and IT. Don't leave anyone out. If they touch the customer, enable these touches, it's part of the experience and it needs to be accounted for. So what's the balance, right? How do we strike that balance? So we're going to speak a little bit today about what we're seeing in the current mindset and how we feel we need to enable transformations to move our mindset. So right now we see this all the time, right? That the mindset change over the years that companies and marketers, we're starting to get it, right? Digital is at the core of how our customers are engaging with your brand. But this realization, honestly, is coming with baggage. And it's much bigger than just your online advertising and email nurture program. Isn't that right now?
It is. It's really, we see it as a truly connected experience across the business with every single customer touch point. And sort of as Gil alluded to earlier, it's not just making a change from billboards to online. It's really thinking about digital across the website, across mobile, across offline experiences, and understanding what those online communities are where your product is rated and engaged with socially and where your customers are talking. And so we look at digital in the space of transformation as every single opportunity you have to connect with your buyer online.
You know, all the research that we've done in the last few years is really shown that digital is an important component, but it happens in conjunction with all the other interactions they have. So this concept of connection actually reaches all the way to how they interact with you in person at events and with sales as well. If you know, to complete this transformation and do it well, your connection has to be across all of those things, because they're not going to make a distinction between the part of your organization that's managing the human touches and one that's managing digital. They're going to see you as one company, and they expect and you know, frankly deserve a consistent experience across the board, whether it's digital or not.
Exactly.
So around transformation strategy, there's a mindset that we see common that that you know, you've agreed that there's a critical role of digital for your customer and your organization. You can accept that, you know, it's part of what's going to drive your transformation strategy. And ultimately, we're seeing our clients equate MarTech investments being tied to transformation. And for a large part, that's true, but there's much more to account for in this case.
Right, and kind of as Gil alluded to earlier, and as Kyle talked about with the change management component of this, transformation might start in any number of places within your organization, and it'll be a part of every intersection your buyer has with your brand. And we'll keep reiterating that it's really tied to the entire customer experience and the entire organization.
You know, I think we all probably have friends out there that have really great kitchens but can't cook. And that's what happens when you put too much focus on marketing technology when it comes to transformation. You'll end up with all the tools, but if you don't put the investment in process and people and skills in it as well, it's not necessarily going to do you a lot of good. So when you think about this transformation, think about it from those dimensions, not just the technology, but the processes, people, and skill sets that you need to make it real.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you know, marketing is feeling that, you know, we're responsible for transformation. You know, the spend is moving over to marketing in terms of the technology investments, and we're responsible for it, and it includes digital and technology and the customer, but there isn't necessarily always a top-down mandate with assigned resources and budget to get to the strategy. And as Gil he showed the stats, you know, that transformation is not just a marketing thing, it's an executive priority.
And what we see in a lot of research and thought leadership on this topic is that transformation has to be committed to from the top down with dedicated resources and leadership support. And it really then becomes custom to each organization what that allocation looks like. And it may be a combination of resources assigned internally where there's a champion for transformation, and we'll speak to this in one of our client examples, or it may come from bringing in an outside consultant who can serve in that change agent role, or it could be an entire partner that comes in to help build a strategy and drive that change and bring different business units and stakeholders to the table so that you can really have a defined plan and have somebody that can guide and help implement this transformation across the organization.
You know, as Natalie mentioned, there's different ways to go through that process, but I think one thing to think about is there's some sort of consistent red flags that we'll see. So what you don't want to hear is things like, oh, marketing will just run it and figure it out for everybody. That's something that you don't want to hear, because that's some transformation, something that works across the org. The other is when you hear it referred to as a project. You know, this kind of transformation is not a project. It does not have a defined start and end date. It's something that is going to take it's going to be an ongoing project, and it's something that is a cultural change, not just sort of a project that you execute and you're done and you're finished.
Let's talk about transformation as it relates to the customer journey. And as we've gone through our transformation from a demand gen perspective over the years, you know, we've defined customer journeys as a set of defined steps in buyer's decision-making process that help determine content and touch points. And you probably have a defined customer journey that wraps around your typical awareness, consideration, conversion, and loyalty path, and you set out content and touch points that match the desired outcome of those journey stages. However, today, advancing the journey is more than just about understanding the actual buying process, as well as the unique personas of your buyers.
as you think about how that can set you up for transformation, when you evolve the role of the customer journey and really put the customer first, we think it becomes much more about their needs rather than these predefined stages. They're not going away, but you can start to identify the needs and behavioral tendencies through advanced analytics, through different channel analytics, first-party, third-party data, and all of that will start to advance how your brand intersects with the buyer at the right place and the right time. So it could be a combination of the amount of touch points that happen during a longer awareness phase, or maybe their consideration phase you can consolidate because you know that they're based on their behavior and how they're engaging with content and maybe certain even sales and over the phone and in person, you might be able to understand where exactly they are in that buying process a little bit better so that the journey becomes more about the experience.
It's funny, we just spent some time talking about how technology isn't the only solution, but this is one place where technology does have a lot of promise. There is technology now that will help you, as Natalie mentioned, sort of analyze that and deliver the right experiences. You just have to make sure that you understand the customer buy journey well enough to understand what it's telling you and have the content and information and interactions ready to actually deliver on that promise of personalization.
So let's relate this to customer experience. I think that we as marketers, we tend to get a little myopic and we think about the customer, that we own the customer experience. It's driven by marketing. It's often, as we equate it now in our current mindset, it's central to digital experiences only. And we're thinking about that as our responsibility. We're not necessarily always sitting at the table with the product team or the call center or sometimes, the sales team. And we're thinking about how customer experience, how the customer experiences the brand, and usually we're thinking about it through digital lens only and through the touch points marketing is responsible for, but we have to think about it in a much larger sense.
Right, and so that's where we come back to this connected and consistent experience. It's across touch points, it's across channels, and we can't say it enough, it's across business units of the organization. There's research that just came out that's showing how marketing does include more connection with IT and with sales, but it is bringing in all those other places where the customer might have an opportunity to buy or complain or give compliments, and that could happen in communities. It could happen directly with the brand itself. So the more we can look at every single channel, online, offline, the digital properties that are owned and earned and paid, and understand how they represent that connected and consistent experience for the customer, we can make it a much more cohesive experience, because we all know the second they feel disconnected, it's very easy for them to go somewhere else and go straight to the competition.
For a lot of companies, they sell a lot of different products, and those products are sold by business units. But in the end, when you look at who they're actually selling to, a lot of times they're selling to the same person in the org. And that person doesn't necessarily understand or care about your business unit boundaries. And all they really want is one message from you and one sense of what you're selling and what problems you can solve for them. And if they can actually figure out how you're organized based on how you're interacting with them, that's not a good thing. So looking at that person as a customer and thinking about the problem from their point of view is the best way to ensure that you deliver this kind of consistent and consolidated user experience.
So speaking to analytics and insights, and it's probably been a big victory for a lot of our clients and companies out there, that they're able to actually see a solid history of engagement. And it is siloed around the marketing function and different engagement silos within the marketing function. And if you think about the analytics you're focusing on around web and email and media and points of conversion, super important analytics to capture. We consider it a victory if we've got a dashboard and we can make decisions based on that history. And they help lay the groundwork for data-driven marketing. But the next level of transformation is really the place to be thinking about where to take those analytics. And Natalie's got a comment on that.
Yeah, but it's really, how do you apply those analytics in a predictive manner to what will happen next in the buyer journey? And I know Gil will chime in on predictive, and we know that it's not easy, and it does take a level of intelligence and human insights against the data that you have. But the more you can understand and definitely want to have that historic attribution, but also have the ability to use your analytics and create more content and experience ahead of the buyer's needs, you can use all of that to start to become first to market and understand, again, where you can meet your customers when they're ready, not just a little bit after the fact. And I think there's also opportunities to start to use analytics, as Gil was saying. When a customer is used to buying from the same person or on the same channel, you can start to get a little bit more innovative based on how can we bring other business units or other product teams into the fold here based on what we know from the data and the analytics about that customer profile.
And we really do think, if you look at the 5 to 10 year big picture, that predictive is going to be the way the market goes. It's going to go from sort of the reactive marketing that we have now to much more proactive. The challenge is it's a big thing, and how do you actually start with this? So what we always tell people is find the problems that there are certain use cases that predictive makes the most sense in, whether it's prioritizing your prospects or deciding what content to deliver to a person at a specific time. Figure out the problem that you want to solve and then apply it that way. Start small and expand it out. Because in the end, predictive analytics is only useful if it can actually change the way that you decide, or how you decide, and how you deliver information to those clients to make them more likely to buy.
So one of the things we want to think about is technology as a differentiation, as a tool to help us compete better. And right now, we see most of our clients using marketing technology as a tool for campaign execution, content management. You think about your stack, it's very tactically driven and possibly siloed. Your CMS houses your website and your content. Your marketing automation is for emails, landing pages, and lead management. If you're advanced, you're doing lead scoring and progressive profiling. You're working in conjunction with your CRM. Analytics may be coming from many sources, and you may or may not have a dashboard, and together they're functioning as tools for executing campaigns, publishing content, and capturing leads. But now we need to think about it a little bit differently.
So we can talk about how to use marketing technology as a point of differentiation, and it can be tied to both the internal functions it provides business stakeholders as well as for that customer-facing experience. So we look at how can we use technology in a more coordinated fashion. Much like Kyle just said, you've got a whole marketing cloud stack. You've got a CMS, you've got marketing automation, you have analytics, but how can you start to tie them together across business groups so that, again, going back to analytics and maybe identifying new product opportunities, can you be first to market using technology to maybe start to pilot or beta test or give some of your select customers an opportunity to try things first because you know that they're ready for it. We also have seen success where opening the door to technology with your creative teams and product teams and other teams and let them use technology to come up with more innovative applications for reaching your customers. It's not just about the team that's used to managing the technology, but allowing more into the room and really get some fresh insights on what can we do with our technology that will help set our brand apart. So the ripple effect of that is really, ultimately, we're all looking for more sales and better customer satisfaction and ultimately loyalty.
Natalie used two really important words in her statements. One is coordination and one is differentiation. At SiriusDecisions, we track the adoption of certain marketing technologies across the clients that we work with. And the reality is everybody is moving towards a very similar stack. But it's not just the technology in which stack that you have that matters. It's how well you connect those things so that you can use your marketing data that sits in your marketing automation platform and your customer data that sits in your CRM and use it to drive the decisions and content that are delivered through your content management system. So it's about how well you connect it, how well you understand the capabilities of each, and how well you support it behind the scenes with processing content. That's what's going to differentiate you and your marketing technology in the end to drive that customer revenue.
Absolutely.
Let's give some case examples. We have an advantage as a full-service digital and demand gen agency because we see nearly all of our clients are going through different forms of this process in some way, shape, or form. If they're not, they're getting left behind. They're coming to us to make sure that their current demand gen efforts are working as hard as they can across channels. They're trying to maximize that as best as possible, but they're also leaning on us to help them navigate all the moving parts of transforming their business, and in particular the marketing function of their business as it relates to a larger business objective of digital transformation. And whether it's a strategy to begin the process or maturing their marketing overall prowess through how they build and run customer experiences. So for example, let's look at Constellation Energy. They're an excellent company and they provide energy solutions for B2B residential and government customers. Pretty broad mix of customers who on a daily basis they need to manage bills, utility settings, a wide range of service needs. And Constellation is also in a very competitive utility market. It's focused on providing great service to their existing customers while also managing new customer acquisition programs. Believe it or not, they have to acquire customers to keep alive, right? So they keep momentum with their current customers through existing web properties, authenticated portals, and existing brand story. Rather than undergo a complete redesign all at the same time, they focus on certain aspects of transformation that needed to happen quickly. They selected the Adobe Experience Manager in order to have an enterprise solution. Their big cloud, right? Their marketing cloud, they could roll out in phases across business units. Focusing first on the user experience of existing customers, the new CMS was architected to serve unique audience segments while also setting up an opportunity for future personalization. The integration of smart forms established a baseline for improving conversion performance with a focus on optimizing their overall customer sales cycle in the long run. The customers, they're a great example of those who require a truly connected and personalized experience, and it's delivering that experience that will be able to compete in their unique markets. In addition to a phased and prioritized approach looking at transformation as a process, Constellation has internal stakeholders advocating for the ongoing implementation of the next phase of transformation, and it's relying on external partners like R2i to help facilitate the strategy and execution of their programs. Now I was going to talk about Bluetooth next.
So here's a name that probably a lot of you know, and Bluetooth is a global wireless standard for simple and secure connectivity. And they have a global community of over 30,000 active members, and their goal as a brand is to really unify, harmonize, and drive innovation across this community who's focused on all the connected devices around us. They have an extremely active community and Bluetooth wants to be able to support that community through more personalized and engaging experiences. So they identified a parallel path of execution and transformation because they need to maintain current relationships. They want to continue to encourage user-generated content, and they need to also be able to continue promoting Bluetooth technologies. However, their special interest group had made an investment to mature their marketing technology along with the digital experiences it could provide for the community and their business objectives. So they recognize that this transformation would need to happen in phases. A lot of these, as Gil said, are not projects. It's a long-term commitment to driving change and identifying what can be done over the course of a longer period of time using roadmaps and persona and personalization path strategies, in this case for very distinct audiences. The Bluetooth roadmap for transformation was being built while the more immediate milestones for best practices of implementation were underway. So things like information architecture, SEO, analytics were all being mapped out and in a 2-year plan to say, here's how we're going to implement these over time for long-term business success. We have one more example for you.
I'm going to speak to a recent example. We've been working with Volvo Construction Equipment. They're a leading equipment manufacturer in North America, and a lot like other big industries, and they think that they have an old school audience, basically, in the past. Like this is, heavy lifting construction people. These are people who, they're not living in a digital mindset. But the thing is that today everybody does. It doesn't matter whether you are the CEO of a company or you're the guy who's buying tractors. You're living in a digital world, in your personal world, and it's then manifesting into your business world. So Volvo came to understand that the movement of their B2B audience is moving to that digital-first mindset. And one of the first steps here is recognizing that more of their customer base is using social and other digital channels to not only form a community around their products and industry, but they're also sharing their experiences with the Volvo brand. So the marketing team, Volvo's marketing team, saw this as an opportunity to focus their current execution priorities and develop a multi-channel effort that would get them to collect more profile data on their customers. They needed to understand more so that they can map their transformation strategy. So with longer-term plans tied to the overarching corporate marketing strategy, the North American business unit was able to set themselves up for customer-first transformation. So thinking about the customer lens in the first mindset through a series of laser-focused, content-rich campaigns, and it helped them consistently create a more complete profile for their audience that ultimately was able to helping them optimize their specific technologies. So This, in addition to multi-channel analytics, captured on visual dashboards, also provided new visibility into current efforts. And it's helping inform the best marketing mix for the media channels and seasonality of campaigns. It's really the beginning of their transformation was this customer-first mindset and understanding their customers were living in a digital-first mindset. So we're going to leave you with this. How to get started, right? So we're all started in one way, shape, or form, and right now we know that there's no question about the value of transformation or why you need to move your organization forward. But there's a balance to strike. You can't stop what you're doing today just to plan for the future. Frankly, you have to do both. You have to keep going. And each of the core drivers of transformation is likely part of how you're already functioning. And they're going to carry a different impact both within your organization and for your customers. So today we're just going to leave you with a checklist of items in each of the most important areas connected to your current execution and how you transform your business. You can't necessarily prioritize them all equally, and because transformation is an ongoing process, not a project, there's no perfect order for beginning the change. So use this as a starting point to identify opportunities for transformation and to bring others into the conversation early. Do these things now and enable your brand for transformation. So we're going to post this deck for your use and hope it supports your effort to drive positive change within your organization. And Natalie's going to finish up for us.
We do have a couple minutes. I really appreciate, Gil and Kyle, your time walking us through all this. We do have time if there's any questions anyone would like to post into the chat, or if you've got interest in coming off mute, fire away. But we will make this available and send you a couple questions, and appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you all very much.